Welcome everybody to the Climate Center's webinar here. This is the 6th webinar in our Investing in Climate Action for Jobs, Health and Equity webinar series. My name is Doron Amran. I work for the Climate Center, a climate and policy nonprofit working to achieve equitable climate action at speed and scale, starting in California and inspiring action around the world. We'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing, but mostly we're excited you could be here for today's webinar, which is investing in building electrification for a climate safe future. I do have a quick update to our agenda for today. Alison Nemerau is unfortunately ill and will not be joining us, but Senator Becker will be here as well as our other esteemed speakers. And so we're going to have a great agenda and a lot of interesting information, perhaps a little more time for Q&A with you all, our attendees. So thank you all for being here. Before I turn the program over to my colleague, Woody Hastings, who's going to set some context for us and lead us to our first presenter, I would like to just thank everybody for being here and really quickly thank some of the other people who make our webinars possible. So I'm going to do a quick screen share. And here we go. Welcome to our webinar. This is, as I mentioned, part of our series on investing in climate action for jobs, health, and equity. We've had a number of webinars. Some of you have attended previous webinars, but today we're going to be talking about investing in building electrification for a climate safe future. I would like to point out we do have more webinars upcoming, including one on investing in farmers who sequester carbon. Very interesting topic tied to a bill that we're carrying right now in the California legislature. That's going to be happening later this summer. We hope you'll stay tuned for details of that, and we hope you can join us then also. But we're particularly glad that you're here today, together with a bunch of activists and climate professionals from around the state of California, as well as all of our supporters. So I would like, I cut off the webinar sponsors. So I would just like to thank all of our various sponsors who help make our webinars possible, including financial institutions like River City Bank, energy companies like Blue Planet Energy and Y-Green, Summit State Bank, our many nonprofits. Big shout out to Silicon Valley Clean Energy, who's participating in today's webinar, MCE, Peninsula Clean Energy, LA Department of Water and Power, Terra Verde, Bay Area Air Quality Management District. I think you can see from the wide range of companies that support our work, the breadth of the coalition that we're building for a climate safe California. And you can see it also in our promotional partners, who I'd also like to thank, who come from across the state: Better World Group, Clean Coalition, Joint Venture Silicon Valley, Climate Resolve down in LA, the Community Environmental Council, Civic Well, Move LA, Actera, Center for Sustainable Energy, California Environmental Voters, Drawdown Bay Area, and Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. We thank all of our nonprofit partners and all of our sponsors for helping make our work possible. And we thank you, our attendees, for engaging with us and coming here today. So thank you so much. And I'm very happy now to turn the conversation over to my colleague, Woody Hastings, who's going to be setting a little context for us before we go to our first speaker, Senator Becker, who I'm glad to see is here with us. So thank you, Senator Becker. Woody, why don't you tell people a little bit why we're talking about building electrification here today?
Sure. Well, thanks very much, Doron, and good morning, and thank you all for joining us. I'm just going to take about 5 minutes to review the Climate Center's Climate Safe California campaign with a bit about how building electrification fits into the campaign framework. The challenge is that the climate crisis is hitting harder and faster than scientists predicted even just a few years ago. The United Nations recently warned that we are experiencing a code red moment for humanity. 9 of 15 global tipping points, such as polar ice loss and species die-offs, are underway now, with the potential for a domino effect to an uninhabitable hothouse climate if we don't act soon. As we know, devastating wildfires and crippling drought have become the new abnormal for Californians, disproportionately harming people of color and lower income communities. And if we don't act quickly to change course, these climate extremes and the costs associated with dealing with them down the line will only get worse. Climate Safe California is a 5-year initiative to enact the bold policies required by science to have California on track to be doing its part for a safe climate by 2030. The goal is that by no later than 2025, the state will have enacted climate policies that put us on track by 2030 to be where we need to be, net negative emissions via deep emissions cuts combined with natural and working land sequestration. Climate Center and in the campaign abides by 3 key guiding principles: adhering to the latest climate science, working for a truly just transition for workers, their families, and their communities, and centering all of it with an equity and justice lens. Key strategies in Climate Safe California include phasing out fossil fuels, which is where the building electrification work falls into, scaling up natural and working lands carbon sequestration, investments in community resilience, and a scale up of climate action funding. Buildings account for about 25% of the greenhouse gas emissions in California. In order to achieve the required reductions, we need to take the annual emission of about 54 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent from the sector in 2020 down to about 17 million metric tons by 2030. This photo here, it's my background, and it's the image here is taken from the roof of a condo in San Francisco called Sol Lux Alpha, which is it's got no gas hookup. It produces twice the energy that it consumes. And just a view from the rooftop of that structure and looking at solar on the rooftops of other buildings in the Mission District in San Francisco. So there's the rooftop. So when we talk about reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the building sector, we're mostly talking about fossil gas or methane, euphemistically known as natural gas. Methane is more than 25 times more powerful than carbon dioxide in terms of global heating potential. Recent studies show that methane emissions from leaks in major cities are double the amount previously thought, and that methane emissions from extraction of fossil gas are as much as 40% higher than previously thought. With a relatively clean electric grid in California that is on a trajectory toward 100% renewable energy and very low carbon emissions, there's a very clear path to rapid reductions by electrifying the building sector. Even cold economic calculations are now favorable to renewables. We advocate requiring 100% electric appliances in all new buildings in the next Title 24 reauthorization, enacting zero emission building codes, and rapidly phasing out fossil gas in the enormous existing building stock, starting with support for low income retrofits. Setting ambitious targets works. Here are just a few examples. AB 1493 from 2002 was the first bill to set tailpipe greenhouse gas emissions reductions goals. This was later adopted by 13 other states and became the basis for the 2010 National Clean Car Standards. SB 100 from 2018 set the goal of 100% carbon-free electricity by 2045. That was subsequently adopted by 10 other states and the Biden administration, but with earlier deadlines. California has fallen behind. Here are just a few examples of where other nations have more ambitious climate goals. When our elected officials help accelerate the transition to localized, democratized, clean energy economy, we all benefit. Our communities deserve accelerated, equity-centered solutions. The Climate Center is working to make them a reality. The initiatives I've touched on fit together like pieces of a puzzle. We need to pursue all of them in tandem to deliver on the promise of a climate-safe future. If we can do this in California, the 5th largest economy in the world and a major oil and gas producing state, we can do it anywhere. The Climate Center envisions a future where everyone in California enjoys equal access to true climate solutions, including clean air and water, renewable energy, sustainable mobility, healthful food, and more. We urge you to review Climate Safe California, and if you like what you see, endorse it. Nina will be dropping the link to Climate Safe California in the chat, and she'll also be talking about it later. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Duran, to introduce Senator Becker.
Thank you, Woody, and thank you all for considering joining the many hundreds, over 1,600 who have endorsed Climate Safe California. Um, let's move to our first speaker, Senator Josh Becker. Like with all of our speakers, we're going to be dropping links to the full bio in the chat so that you can see them. But I do want to just mention, Senator Becker, that you represent the residents of California's 13th Senate District, which comprises most of San Mateo County and parts of Santa Clara. I know you've authored a number of bills accelerating California's transition to 100% clean energy. You have a couple of bills right now that we're very excited about, and we'll be talking about them towards the end of our presentation. So everyone stick around, you'll have a chance to support one of Senator Becker's bills at the end. I also want to say that among your many accolades and bona fides, Senator Becker, you did earn your JD MBA from Stanford University in 1999, but as a graduate of UC Santa Cruz and UC Berkeley, I promise we will not hold that against you. So well, on that note, I'd like to turn it over to you, Senator Becker. Thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
Excellent. Well, I'm happy to be here and very grateful to the Climate Center for all of your work, all of your leadership, both the thought leadership and policy leadership and political will. It's critical. This is an all hands on deck a moment for the reasons mentioned in the slide. And you know, I knew going in that while obviously we've done some good things in the past in California, I knew that it was going to be a fight every day, and it is. It's a fight every day up here to pass the policies that we need to advance the vision that was just identified. And as you know, it takes everything. We got to address transportation, it's buildings, it's the grid, continue to get to 100%, it's building materials. And with my team, we work very hard to be strategic and work in every element of that. But buildings are really important, a piece of it. I'm going to see if I can share my screen, which I've not done from this computer, but let's see. How's that? Can you see it?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, excellent. Now I will say, it's funny. I was trying to get a picture up in this, but I did not. It's not in the presentation. But I was literally at my house yesterday installing my heat pump, and today is our hot water heater, and doing full electrification literally as we speak. I was just back down checking on them yesterday. So we are walking the walk, so to speak, and doing full home electrification at the moment as we speak. So here are some of my key focus areas. Really, climate and social justice are my critical areas. I'm proud to be vice chair of the Joint Climate Change Committee. We have a new committee on our clean energy future that will be launching, which has made a great hire out of our district who had worked for Menlo Spark and Berkeley grad, and who just graduated 3 years from Berkeley. She's phenomenal. Be helping out on our committee. And I'm also, of course, on the Energy and Utilities Committee. So very focused on this area. And as I said, every aspect of the economy, because that's what this is, every aspect of the economy. A big picture for climate action. We always like to start with a big picture. We don't, not going to go into obviously every detail here, but as you can see, buildings are an important piece. About 10% directly of our climate, of our greenhouse gas emissions. And then, of course, we have to get the grid to 100% if we're going to get the full benefit. Our grid is about 50% clean right now if you take out Diablo Canyon. And of course, we're going to be greatly increasing our electricity use as we decarbonize both transportation and buildings. So getting that grid to 100%, 24/7, the big difference between 100% renewable and 24/7 clean energy. And that's what we're focused on, 24/7 clean energy every hour a day, particularly addressing the peak. Some of the challenges, as you know, appliances turn over a lot less frequency than cars. We have 14 million existing homes. So we're trying to make sure we have the strongest codes for new homes, but we obviously have to address existing homes and buildings as well. And that's everything that we'll talk about. It's the supply chain. It's having contractors educated. It's having clean appliances ready to go at the time it's needed. It's doing all the education in advance. There's 7.5 billion square feet of existing commercial, and we're still in the early stages of some of the REACH code work and this other work, and it's still expensive, especially if you're trying to do all this up front. We have been successful, very proud. Obviously, Berkeley did the first gas ban. Menlo Park, my city, did the first all-electric REACH code and expanded to many cities now up and down the peninsula. And we just heard some good reports out of LA. Of course, we had Oakland, San Jose, New York City adopting all-electric REACH codes. So this is a critical part of expanding our efforts for all-electric new construction and gas bans. So what are some of the solutions? Well, there are those building codes and REACH codes. Obviously, a lot of interest in replace on burnout ordinances. Half Moon Bay, my district, attempted. Menlo Park attempted that. Half Moon Bay has attempted it. We're still not quite at that stage of the public will yet, but we are getting there. And in the meantime, the Half Moon Bay did pass a gas phase out. Now, I will say there was a bill in the state legislature advanced by a Democrat this year that would have made it much, much, much harder for any city in California to do a burnout, if not nearly impossible to do a burnout ordinance. And we're able to beat that back, change that bill dramatically. It's a very, very different bill, but just to show you that's what's happening. The playbook across the country, which is prohibiting cities from doing anything innovative in clean energy, is a threat here in California. You probably didn't expect that, but it is. And then we have the air quality management districts working on these bans, and that is a super powerful and important development. Building performance standards, we've seen this with New York City, and then Washington State, Colorado. My friend Cliff Majerzik, my college classmate who from the Institute of Market Transformation, leading those efforts. We are working with Cliff on a 2-year effort here around building performance standards. That's focused on larger buildings, but extremely exciting and important initiative. Senator Skinner's bill this year requiring the use of lower greenhouse warming potential refrigerants is also an important part of this. So many different aspects. A bill that we're doing with Ben Allen around requiring EV charging in new multifamily, I'd say is an important piece of that as well. Incentives, of course, appliance rebates. These are some pictures from some units. I think similar units that I am putting in. That Dakin unit, I believe, is, yeah, I think that's my unit there. Appliance rebates, direct install programs, because as we talked about, I think the next slide, yeah, it's really incentives and financing. And Smud's working on this, Peninsula Clean Energy, Silicon Valley Clean Energy. How do you get adoption? The tech and build programs. I was working yesterday on advocating for the tech program. I know my contractor said we had to get in by May 13th, otherwise incentives are running out. And then we got in like, no, may run out May 12th. Well, it turns out until May 15th. But the tech program is running out of money for market-based incentives, only $40 million, oversubscribed in 6 months, way faster than people thought, shows that the demand is there, and we need the legislature to refill that and the governor to refill that money. Right now, there's no direct money for tech, for that TECH program in the budget, and we need everyone's help, everyone's voice to work on changing that. The build program for new construction, low-cost financing critical. I have a bill this year with the Building Decarb Coalition around tariff on bill financing, and I think we have a slide on that later. Yeah, it's one of these sort of subtle but really important bills that will allow on-bill financing. And because, as with solar, not many people were willing to pay $30,000 up front, but once you can finance it, as I worked on with Clean Power Finance, early on, we were like, working on this slogan for no money down solar. But now that you can have leases, prepaid leases, whatever, you have dramatically more adoption. Some retrofits are cost effective now. But right now, building owners are shouldering much of the upgrade costs. So we have to look at what Ithaca, New York is doing with Black Power. Incredibly exciting work. Menlo Park is working on something, trying to look at something similar. But we need to have financing. We need to leverage the money that's coming from the state legislature this year to make sure that we can get as many homes done as possible. My bill last year that passed, SB 68, requires best practices relating to building decarb challenges, really about better information, better technology. We tried for better service level agreements from the IOUs. They killed that piece of it, but still a lot of good in that bill. And we're working on the implementation now, building market awareness. Every electric home begets another electric home. We need people to do this, to publicize it, let people know these electric buildings that are going up, streamline permitting, expanding and training the workforce, getting contractors signed up and participating, which was a huge success of the tech program, is critically important. My bill that I'll mention allow ratepayers to make upgrades in their home through the utility. And this is a proven model that can accelerate adoption of both energy and water efficiency measures. I also have a bill this year around getting our state government to net zero. If we're going to get the rest of the state to net zero, let's have our state lead the way. The UC system, as you know, has a net zero target of 2025. Now, of course, that will not all be direct emissions reductions, but it may be 70%, maybe 60%. And then they'll face tough choices, what are really high quality offsets that they're willing to do. So we need to get the state to zero and start with net zero. And really, this is about buildings. We're working on the fleet as well, of course, and our electricity that we consume as a state. But we have to green our buildings as well. And that's what the procurement power of the state will help drive this market even faster. So the governor's proposal, $650 million for direct install, mostly for low income, $300 million for appliances. We are pushing for an additional $1 billion. It's a very tough fight. Would love anyone's help with this. Other efforts, the CARB's 5-year scoping plan for new construction with targets for all electric and to focus on the existing building stock. So, these are critical parts to drive forward with CARB. And then again, trying to figure out any mechanism of financing that we can possibly find. There is this program that we found, the California Alternative Energy and Advanced Transportation Funding Authority does do low-cost financing programs for electrification and decarb upgrades. And we're looking, how can we tie that in? How can we expand that in with the federal money that's coming and expand those efforts? Of course, when we talk about buildings, we also have to talk about building materials. As you know, in 2020, when to the appearances of many of us, we shut down the global economy, we only reduced carbon emissions 6%, 7%. Why was that? Because it's embedded in all these other things. It's embedded in our building materials. Concrete and cement are about 7 or 8% of GHG emissions globally, depending on how you ask. Those are largely process emissions from the way when you make cement. So we succeeded my first year, got a net zero target. First net zero target for any sector of the California economy, by the way. So we have a net zero target for cement. And now this year, working on a concrete bill, also very difficult. The contractors will oppose. We actually will get, I believe, some of the concrete big companies to in support. But this is to put concrete into our Buy Clean California framework. So the state, which buys about 40% of concrete and cement, will buy low carbon concrete. Exciting, some developments with mass timber. Photos taken by someone on my team. This building going up right now in San Mateo. greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. So that's really up to all of us. And I'm certainly pushing here, but open to any thoughts, advice, or feedback. And once again, grateful to the Climate Center for your partnership.
Thank you, Senator Becker, and thank you for such a great presentation. We appreciate it. I know you're scheduled to head out at 10:30. I don't know. If you got
Yeah, it depends. I'm the fifth or sixth bill up in public safety, so it depends. Depends when they need me.
Okay, well, let's get to a couple of questions, and maybe we'll go to 10:35. I'm just letting our timekeepers know because we do have some time to get to some questions. So there's been a couple of questions for you, Senator Becker, if you want to address these on net energy metering. As a lot of us know, and this is obviously solar panels on our roofs are kind of a key part of this whole greening of buildings. We saw some images earlier. Are you working on it? I know it's in the hands of the Public Utilities Commission. It's not actually the purview of the Senate per se, but several questions came on. Can you influence NEM 3.0 proposals to accelerate the adoption and make sure it's affordable for everybody? What thoughts do you have on that issue moving forward before I have some other questions more germane to the specific topic?
Yeah, I immediately gathered a bunch of my colleagues who are care about these issues. And we got on the phone with installers, with many people in the ecosystem, people that finance rooftop solar and such, and done op-eds. We're pushing back strongly, pushing back directly with the governor. I think there is a compromise there. We can ramp down incentives over time, but the original proposals were a disaster, and I've been absolutely clear on that. And we also don't want to, we got a grandfather and people who who signed up already under current, under under one understanding. So, we have to keep pushing. I think the PUC heard us, but it's certainly not over yet, and it's something we all need to keep working on.
Absolutely agree. And here at the Climate Center, we're going to stand with you the whole way to make sure that solar stays affordable for people here in California.
Yeah.
Here's another question, and I want to thank you. You talk about let's not shunt it off to other people, right? We have to take responsibility, and I want to laud you, as many people have, for actually walking the talk with the building electrification of your own home. So here's a question: what challenges have you faced personally in doing that, in going fully electric in your home? And what lessons have you learned that may help you craft policy moving forward?
Well, the tech is we need to put more money into those incentive programs, which is essentially used up, as I said. That's certainly one. We have to educate. I do happen to, one of my friends from business school, her husband started a company that does all electric conversion. So, I had a place to go. But yeah, I could have easily gone to a contractor who tried to talk me out of it, who told me all the reasons I shouldn't do it. Now is a bad time, and blah, blah, blah. And so very aware of that issue. And it's, again, part of our SB 68 and part of our ongoing efforts. And SVCE especially has great programs around this. So I think that's a big piece of it. I'm working on the supply chain, getting folks to manufacture here will also be terrific. And but really mostly, kind of education, talking to my wife about induction cooktops and such. So it's really, I think, that education piece, for everyone, including myself.
And for contractors and builders also, as you pointed out.
Yeah, for sure.
Critical.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's just everyone, success begets success in this area, for sure.
Well, wonderful. So I think we do have time for a couple more questions. So here's one from Ellie Cohen, our CEO. What are the biggest challenges to accelerated equitable climate policy in California? And what do you need from the climate movement to support that kind of action? How can we put wind in your sails?
I appreciate it. And I appreciate the Climate Center's advocacy. We really need we need people in the details at the agencies, but really in the details in legislation. we hear the voices, people hear loud and clear from the utilities saying, oh, why we can't do this, why, we got to go slower, and reliability. And some of my colleagues are, they're concerned about reliability. I mean, we're all concerned this summer, and, we're unfortunately, we gave all our demand response money to the utilities, IOUs, who historically do not run great consumer facing programs. And we're counting on them for our demand response this summer. And yeah, we could have issues this summer for sure. And then people are going to want to blame it on clean energy, and it's not. It's not the fault of clean energy. So there are reliability issues, but there are clean ways to solve those reliability issues. But we do need to educate many of my colleagues. Again, we just had a briefing with Energy Innovation yesterday on their plan and their data showing that we can reliably get to 85% clean energy very quickly. Anyway, sorry, I'm a bit of a tangent, but it's important to keep doing that that education. But we really do need people on all of these bills. I mean, there's probably, we started the year with probably 50 climate bills up here. And I mean, I myself have, I think, 9. I have transmission, I've got an hourly accounting bill, we got the tariff bill, we got the my concrete bill. I had a bill around around a energy authority that got kind of neutered this year. That would allow us to build construction, build transmission faster. So we just really need people's efforts in the details. Up here, and to focus on California, I mean, we obviously need as much push on the federal level, but California, we have a massive opportunity. And the budget, it's all going to be decided in the next week. So whoever you can call them, because this is not the time to put $5 billion into a strategic electricity reserve buying gas plants. This is not the thing we want to be doing right now. So we really need everyone's help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I got one more question for you, and this is related to wind into sales in your particular bill. You did address SB 1112, the tariff bill, but we're going to be doing a call to action later on that specific bill. So perhaps as your closing thoughts, tell folks a little bit more about that particular bill, why it's important, and what we hope to achieve through that kind of policy change.
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, all this, so much of this is that the technology's here. Just, we know solar, the technology was here, and building electrification, the technology's here, keeps getting better and better. I'm really excited about my my electric hot water heater, newest model using the CO2. I mean, it's gonna be great. And so the technology keeps getting better and better, but technology's here. We have to, we just need financing. We got to help people. Again, not many people can afford and are going to do this if it's all the money up front. And so it's absolutely critical. And that's why the Block Power experiment that Ithaca is doing, and we got to expand that. Anything we do to expand financing, and this bill ability to do utility tariff on bill financing is an important piece of that. So it's just, we're not gonna be able to move as quickly as we need to unless we can help people put it on their bill. They're going to save money over time, so let's finance it over time and lower the upfront cost.
Wonderful. Thank you for making that key point. And that does tie into the theme of this whole webinar series, investing in climate action for jobs, health, and equity. Clearly, we need to direct more money at the things that we want to see more of. And so those types of policies.
Just at least question was on equity. I did want to mention that, yeah, we have to make sure that everyone sees the benefit. A lot of the electric vehicle purchases and the incentives originally went to people who were in wealthier areas, and we have to invest this money. We have $10 billion in there right now for transportation, but also the building money as well. They have to help people across the state, particularly low-income communities, to feel it's areas that there's going to be extreme heat. Great, let's get heat pumps in there. They'll also get air conditioning. But we have to have people feel the benefits of this. If all they see of the clean energy revolution is $7 gas, we're not gonna make progress.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for making those key points, and thank you for being here with us today. We do have a couple other speakers we're going to need to move to. But on behalf of everyone and the 100+ people who are here, Ellie Cohen's thanking you. I thank you. All of us thank you, not just for being here, but for everything you do every day in Sacramento to help us get to a clean energy future. So thank you for being
Great.
here.
I'll probably try to stick around and listen, and thank you for having me.
All right. Cheers. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. Well, Senator Becker mentioned in his remarks several times, he mentioned Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Silicon Valley Clean Energy is one of our supporters, and we're very proud and happy that Zoe Elizabeth is here to talk a little bit more about the role of local action, what you're doing at your CCA, and sort of flesh this out a little more from your perspective. So Zoe, I'm going to turn the floor over to you. You've got your 10 to 12 minutes, so take it away.
Great. Thank you. Well, it is wonderful to be here and to start the morning with just a really inspiring conversation. We're going to talk a lot about how much work there is to do ahead of us, but I also just think it would be remiss not to say how much we're doing in California right now, that we have this record surplus budget and that we're taking steps to really direct towards electrification is inspiring, and we should all feel that inspiration as much as we feel the importance of continuing to move forward in the challenge ahead. So thank you all very much. And I'm excited to talk for you for about 10 minutes about really one of my favorite topics. I'm going to hit on these three themes, or these are the three things I'm hoping that you all will take away. But I also know, because this is a Climate Center webinar, that all of you on this that are participating, they are leaders. You are experts in this field as much as those of us who are talking. So I look forward to the conversation and to learning. And I also use this opportunity to share, some of my ideas more than recommendations, right? Because work on this and think about this, all day sometimes feels like 24 hours a day. And I don't have all of the answers. We're all really figuring out the answers. So I look forward to talking with you all today, but also working through over the next coming years and months on really developing scalable, equitable solutions. So the 3 points that I want to make on how particularly local action can help us get to scale with building electrification, because that's what we really want to talk about. We're talking about decarbonization. It's about how do we electrify all the buildings, more or less, in California, right? So first, local action can help us to test solutions so that the state can get to scale faster. At a local level, we can be more nimble, we can fail faster, we can succeed faster. And so I'm going to give a couple of examples of things that we're trying in Silicon Valley Clean Energy around testing solutions, around policy solutions, around programmatic design solutions, as well as building scale solutions, and of course communication engagement are related to all of those things, because this is we can't get there without communication engagement. Also, the size of this challenge really requires collaboration. And when I think about collaboration, to me, it's about we need to be bold and honest about the scale of the challenge, and of course the opportunities from implementing clean energy solutions that are real and tangible. And we also need to be humble. It requires those of us who work on decarbonization to collaborate with folks in the housing sector, in the building sector, that are working on workforce issues, to know that there's areas where we are experts, and there's others that we need their expertise to be part of this conversation to really get there. So boldness, humility, collaboration. And then this is one, I've been thinking about this a lot lately as we think about getting to scale. We think about anybody who's done any kind of home renovation project, right? You know how much work and how many unforeseen challenges that comes up with. We're talking about retrofitting more or less all the homes and majority of buildings in California, right? And so the more I think about this, I think we can't just think about homes as individual assets, but we really need to think of the kinds of solutions that we think about when we think about infrastructure transformation. And I don't mean grid infrastructure or the distribution system infrastructure. I mean, really just thinking, when we think about improving our highways, when we think about building bridges, what are the types of programs and collaborations and financing models that we use to get to the solutions at that kind of scale? And I think we need that kind of thinking when we think about electrification, because that's the cost and that's also the size. When you begin thinking of all these individual heat pumps across the state that we need to be tapping into. Okay, so before I get into some examples of what we're doing, we've been talking about equity a lot throughout this morning. And this has been a mental model that I've been using to think about how do we incorporate equity, inclusivity, 100% solutions that can get to us 100% decarbonization from the get-go. And so I've been using this metaphor of an airplane versus a runway. And that was inspired for two reasons. One, in my field and in the organizations that I work in, at some point, somebody always says, we're building the plane as we're flying it, which is both apt and slightly terrifying metaphor, right? But we're designing these crucial solutions as we're figuring them out. And then the other thing is, I was thinking about this several months ago at a time when two of our favorite local billionaires were talking and competing about how to get get up into space fastest. So I was thinking a lot about, what are solutions that are going to help a few people, not just escape the climate, but maybe get to a few communities get to a decarbonized future. And then what are the type of solutions that can really build the capacity, build the energy, build that runway to get all communities, all neighborhoods, all people, all buildings really scale up to a fully decarbonized future. And I think even at the local level, when we're working on solutions that are fit to our particular community, it's really important to keep that in mind, right? Is this a solution that's going to maximize the benefits to the most vulnerable, rather than assuming we can, start with maybe those and focus just on the early actors and assume that benefits are going to trickle down? Because we don't see that happen, and we know that that's not going to happen fast enough for us to meet our carbon goals. And thinking out building the workforce and building public health so that we're really improving people's lives, and making sure that we're not creating solutions that are going to increase rates or increase housing vulnerability, in particular when we're talking about retrofitting homes. Things that will serve as a state, national, and global model and lead us to full decarbonization, rather than more niche solutions that might not be adoptable beyond that particular example, and could ultimately lead to stalling decarbonization. So those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about as we're developing these solutions, again, to get us to scale. Now getting into some examples of things that we're doing. So one, local action can demonstrate possibility. As we were just talking about it, Senator Becker knows, as he's been installing a heat pump in his home, heat pumps aren't new technology. They are used throughout the world. They are tried and tested. However, a lot of people still don't know about them. A lot of contractors don't know about them. And when we can put up all the charts that we want, but until people have experienced a building that is reliably cool, reliably well lit, has reliable and affordable hot water, it's hard to really make that believe in it, right? It's hard to make that personal change in your own home or your own business. And so building local demonstrations, particularly in public and community buildings, where not just environmental leaders go, but all folks go, can make electrification tangible, can prove the workforce and health benefits. So one thing we're trying, and this is goes to our board tonight, so if you can check back tomorrow to see if this program is going to be in action, or next time we are here, we'll let you know that we're proposing a program to provide just over $1 million to electrify community buildings in our service territory, such as libraries, community centers, recreation centers, other public buildings. The next is that local action can help to test policy solutions, right? So I saw a question about when do we get to the sticks of things. Senator Becker talked about REACH codes as well. I'm sure this map is already out of date. And I know my figure is also already out of date, but dozens of jurisdictions have adopted REACH codes. And there's also at least 2 natural gas phase out targets that I'm aware of in California, right? And this really helps to move the state forward towards the newest CEC state code, which really pushes towards electrification much more than the code did 3 years ago. So at a local level, you can build the momentum, test things, demonstrate that there's a willingness and a desire, that political will to make things happen. And then existing building policy, this is really the next frontier. And there's opportunities here, and there's also a lot to learn. So one thing that we're doing at a local level is that we'll be have something called a local policy experimentation program. And we're in the process of designing what that will look like right now, but we're putting forward $1.5 million to help our local jurisdictions develop, design, test different types of local policies, whether it's something like a retrofit on burnout policy or something different, neighborhood scale electrification, for example. And that can also help with the kind of engagement that's essential to get those policies passed and supported and make sure that they work for people. So they're the key. Then also we can test program design. So we are at the end of the summer, we right now have incentives for heat pump water heaters. We're expanding that to include other building technologies, probably also things such as pre-wiring, so that if somebody wants to get ready to electrify, right? Like, for example, I have a gas hot water heater right now that works just fine and will for a number of years. It would be great if I was able to pre-wire it so that when my hot water heater burned out, I could install an electric heat pump much faster and more effectively. These programs can stack with other programs with tech, but I think really one of the things that's most interesting to me is that we can test different incentive models, different marketing designs to see, okay, what works? What if we layer and provide additional incentives for retrofitting to appliances? Is that more likely to help to get homeowners and business owners to go further? If we have a full concierge service, that's one of the things that we're talking about, really handhold people through developing an electrification plan for the home. Can that get things further? We can design and target programs to specific building types or population sectors, right? Because we all know, again, not all homes are the same, not all residents are the same, not all businesses are the same. We probably need some tailored programs. We can do that at the local level that can then help inform larger policies or programs, sorry. And this is, I guess, my motto, and as I think about this all the time, we are ahead of the curve, and it's important to see that in many ways, right? We are moving the ball forward, and I've been doing this work for a while, and I've never seen so much momentum and interest in building electrification. And we're also just getting started. Okay, so we need to continue to keep our eyes on that horizon. So as an example, we've had this really great program at SBCE. We do a little more than 100 heat pump water heater retrofits a year. We exceeded our own target, but to get to that level of replacing all of those, we're talking about getting to scales of around 10,000 per year, right? So that means scaling $200,000 in incentives to $20 million in incentives in coming years. And that's not even talking about furnaces or ranges yet. This is an illustrative example. I wanted to kind of give people a sense of the numbers we're talking about. We are working on an in-depth analysis, which we'd be happy to, when we work on that, come back and talk about more. So obviously we can't do this. We can do this, but we can't do it alone, right? This is a big problem, but we're talking about retrofitting appliances to help save the planet. That's something that we can do. We can do hard things, but we really do all need to work together. So this is my last slide, right? But it's kind of the question I think that's in front of us. As I mentioned, I have a lot of questions. I have questions for you all. I have ideas, but I don't have answers yet, right? We're working on building that runway, building those answers. So we need to start with equity. We need to think differently, right? We need to not necessarily think about how we've thought about energy efficiency programs, but really think more like infrastructure. We need large, reliable, and simple to access funding sources, right? Tech, I think it's amazing that tech went so fast. We should all be inspired by that. But it's really important that long-term, we have funding sources that are reliable. We can't build a market if the funding's going to come and go and the deadlines change. Senator Becker mentioned this. Where there is clear payback, we can rely on financing. Clearly, there's going to be a role for incentives, but we don't want to over-rely on them. Again, I don't know exactly what this would look like. I've listed some ideas here, not recommendations, but could greenhouse gas reduction funds have a carve out that can provide large scale, long-term money for building electrification? Can we think about redirecting gas infrastructure investments towards electrification? This direct install program is in the current budget. I'm really excited. Is that something that could be really scaled long-term statewide to do this, including job training? Could we maximize economies of scale by doing geographic neighborhood scale targeting rather than more ad hoc electrification? Those are some of the ideas. I look forward to the conversation and any questions that you have. Thank you.
And thank you, Zoe, and thank you, Silicon Valley Clean Energy. A lot of interesting questions coming up. I just want to give everyone a heads up. We do have one more speaker. Laura Gromas will be starting in just a moment. We'll have questions for them both after Laura has completed her remarks. I do want to remind everyone something I mentioned at the beginning. One of our scheduled speakers, Allison Nemerow, is not able to be with us today. She sends her regrets. Her slides will be included in the follow-up packet that you all receive. I do want to note that Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and Zoe, if you would stop your screen sharing, please, that would be wonderful. That way we can clear it for, thank you so much. Silicon Valley Clean Energy is a community choice energy agency. I want to thank all the people here who worked side by side with the Climate Center at helping get CCAs started across California. Sonoma Clean Power, MCE, Peninsula Clean Energy are other examples, along with Silicon Valley Clean Energy. They're doing a lot to push building electrification, transportation electrification. So they're a great example of policy led to something very specific that's now actually putting these benefits and programs in people's hands. So thank you, Silicon Valley Clean Energy. And now I'd like to turn to our next speaker from the U.S. Green Building Council. I'd like to welcome Laura Gromas. And Laura, thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Doran. And thank you so much for the Climate Center for your great work on decarbonization and for the opportunity to speak here. Let me share my presentation here. So I would like to talk today about the challenges to building electrification. I'm with the U.S. Green Building Council, Central California. We are a local nonprofit located in Fresno, California, operating in the San Joaquin Valley. And our mission is to engage San Joaquin Valley communities in the transformational development and promotion of ecologically healthy built environments. We are an aligned chapter of USGBC National, operating here independently. And our focus is on education, networking, green building project management, and advocacy. Behind me, you see an image of the located in the San Joaquin Valley that demonstrates how it can look like here on beautiful, clean air days, where we can see the mountains. And most days, though, we do have pretty bad air quality here. So investments in sustainability and in electrification is sorely needed in our region to improve our environment. I always think of the San Joaquin Valley as being a perfect test ground for all these new technologies and in launching out new approaches towards sustainability, as we have very high poverty rates here, severe environmental challenges, and a huge diversity in our community. So I always say that if we can make things work here, where we are so close to big population centers that are having many more opportunities than us here, then we can launch it out everywhere. So the San Joaquin Valley is certainly an important part in the climate investment strategy here in the state of California. On electrification in the built environment has really been a new concept that has been coming up in the last couple of years. It speeds up the decarbonization efforts. By removing fossil fuels, from the energy consumption at the end source, we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions significantly. And since 25% of California's greenhouse gas emissions come from commercial and residential buildings, building electrification is an important solution to improve our climate resilience. If you look at what does it take to electrify, we have to talk about what does it take to switch every home in California from fossil fuel heating, cooling, and cooking to electric heating, cooling, and cooking. And the alternatives that are heat pumps, electric water heaters, induction stoves, and dryers. The areas that need to be addressed for those are, on the one hand, regulatory issues, then certainly equity concerns and market barriers. The easiest parts to address through regulatory issues are new buildings. We have a little bit more challenges with existing buildings, and from our work in the field, we've seen that electrifying restaurants are the hardest to do, just because of deep-seated convictions that gas cooking is superior, and people are just very much used to using gas stoves. I would like to focus on market barriers. Oops. There are a couple of points to address. First of all, we have high investment costs. And if we look at the equitable approach to this issue, it's not only the investment cost for the appliance itself, but also to have a building electricity ready and to get all the tools that are needed. I recently got an induction stoves, and you cannot use all your pots and pans anymore on the induction stove. So if you are talking about electrification on scale, especially in low-income communities, this is a huge barrier that has to be addressed. That if we move to induction stoves, that we somehow have to figure out how low-income folks can also get pans and pots that work on their new stove. And for some of us, it might be easy to buy a new set of pots and pans, but for low-income folks, that is sometimes a huge barrier, and that would keep them from investing in this new technology. Then it has been addressed by Senator Becker and by Zoe Elizabeth before, that the lack of knowledge and awareness is certainly a huge barrier, and investment in those areas sorely needed, both for the consumers and for contractors. Then availability of appliances and the right advice is a crucial part as well. Suppliers need to have those appliances available, and you have to have customer service reps either from stores and from contractors to be willing to recommend those appliances. So again, that's a workforce development and education. Then in terms of the necessity and the time pressure that we are under, new fossil fuel appliances that are getting installed now have a very long lifespan. So it's crucial to invest in the educational part right now so that we can prevent fossil fuels appliances from being installed and to work against this long lifespan. And then another market barrier, of course, is the readiness of the grid and the existing electrical infrastructure in buildings. If we look at investment costs, we do have the higher upfront cost and the tools that are needed that are already discussed. Some of those issues are getting addressed by the economy of scale, that is reducing the price of new appliances over time. And then one of the other costs that has to be factored in is that buildings have to be electricity ready. So while in 2019, the state of California, starting in 2019, the state of California required all electric panels to be at 200 amp. There's a lot of older buildings that are not at this scale, and their electric panel are not ready for an all-electric home just because of all the plug load. So it's really crucial to consider this, especially for low-income communities, so that there are some incentives to help low-income homeowners to move to an all-electric home. There's a lot of great efforts on incentives and financing structures that can address these early investment costs. On the knowledge and awareness side, we are talking both about the consumers and the contractors. Consumers, the most basic part is just to have an awareness that there are better options than fossil fuel driven appliances. The consumers also have to be aware, have to have the chance to have those appliances available to them, and the trust in those appliances have to be addressed. Especially in the kitchen, there's a lot of deep-seated beliefs about the necessity to have gas-powered stoves. We are currently doing a lot of outreach to the Native American community, and we are talking about induction stove cooktops, and a lot of those, especially the older folks, are saying that they've always cooked on gas and that they could not really relearn how to cook on induction stove. Big educational opportunities have to be provided to provide hands-on opportunities for people to learn about those new appliances. And then you have to have contractors that have the skills and the willingness to install heat pumps, induction stoves, electric water heaters. If by remodeling here in the Central Valley, it's really most of the contractors just don't have any clues. So it's really crucial that we have more programs and more money for those programs to educate contractors, to give the advice, to help the electrification, and then direct outreach to the consumers as well. On restaurant electrification, there is, that's one of the biggest challenges for the electrification. We talked about the end consumer and people in the residential sphere believing in the superiority of cooking with gas, and that's certainly also happening in the restaurant field. The city of Santa Barbara, when they implemented their REACH code for all electric homes and buildings, they excluded restaurants specifically because there was so much pushback from the restaurant industry. And so the barrier is both the cost and the awareness. And again, education and hands-on experience are needed. One of the good things about electrification is that it doesn't only provide climate benefits, but there's a lot of co-benefits, including less energy waste, more precise cooking control, less heat in the kitchens, which really has a less stress in the kitchen, and then a cleaner indoor air quality as well. Thankfully, due to the economy of scale, The prices are getting driven down, and the appliances are getting tested out better. So that improves reliability of the appliances. Again, though, to really provide restaurant electrification on scale, and in-depth outreach on the local scale is severely needed. While there might be some early adapters, and early adapters certainly in areas that are less disadvantaged, there is a lot of investment needed to make that possible in disadvantaged communities. Then the availability of appliances is really important as well. The supply is mostly driven by demand response. And if you have an area where you are have a little bit less fast adaptation, you just don't have a lot of choice when you go to a store and you try or go to a contractor and either want to buy an induction stovetop or a heat pump or an electric water heater. If I go to my local Home Depot here, there's no information about the benefits of induction stovetops. There's no information about the climate impact of gas stoves. So really educating consumers on those is crucial at that source, and having them available to begin with is crucial. We have some members of our chapters that got some heat pumps, and they were only able to get a heat pump because a contractor just started to work on a pilot project to install heat pumps. So there's really not a lot of choice here for contractors that install heat pumps. And if you ask the majority of contractors, they are trying to talk you out of it most times. Plus, in most people only replace their HVAC or heating unit at times of in times of need, right? When the HVAC system breaks. So it's a pressure point, and at that point, the contractor has a lot of power over the buying decision of the consumers. So the education of suppliers, of contractors, is very crucial, to incentivize suppliers to have those appliances available would be an important point to allow electrification on scale.
We need to move to the Q&A when as soon as we can.
Yes.
Thank you.
Then we have the building and grid readiness for electrification. So the electric panel upgrade is a crucial part that needs to be addressed. And the demands on the grid are changing as well. So the update of the grid is a crucial part. The grid has to respond to the impact of climate change, which means here increased fire events, increased heat events, and that increases demand in times of catastrophe. And then we'll have the increased use of renewable energy sources, which are not always available at all times of day. So the investment in batteries is crucial as well. We see a very positive development in all the REACH codes that are getting implemented in California. I have to note that in our area, there's no REACH code implementation, unfortunately, yet. But this is again that we have high poverty rates. There's a lot of issues in our communities that the political leadership is dealing with. More support for local governments that do not have the resources is crucial to help them adapt and help spur electrification along. Then we have a lot of great proven concepts, a lot of projects that show that zero net energy is possible, that electrification is possible, and that allows for more ambitious projects to be implemented and drives confidence in those that do so. In the green building world, building integration is a very important part into the design process to have everybody work together. And this also drives innovation. Performance target and the integrative process deliver together more efficient buildings because everybody is talking to each other and looks at other opportunities to save energy from the get-go by investing in a more efficient building design. This all is not a zero-sum game. Incremental change is certainly possible, and energy efficiency is a good start and helps electrification by reducing the energy load from the beginning. And we do see increased availability of electric devices and appliances in some communities, but not all. So we still need an investment in education, in outreach, and a big investment in workforce development to allow for an on-scale electrification of buildings. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura.
Now I guess we can go over to questions.
Yes. So we do still have a few minutes left for questions, and let our timekeepers know we won't need the full 10 minutes. I can give Nina 5 minutes and I can wrap up a little quicker so we can take the questions till probably about 11:25. And so many questions, Zoe, I'd like to bring you back in. And while I do that, Laura, if you would end your screen sharing, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. And we will be sharing your contact information and everybody's contact information with all of the attendees and registrants as soon as this workshop is over. And if you don't mind, there we go. Zoe, I'd like to bring you back in and start with a question for you. We've had so many great questions, but here's one for you as a CCA, and maybe Laura could address it after you because you mentioned it in your comments, Laura. But Zoe, let's start with you. To fully electrify their homes and their transportation, most Californians, both in their homes and businesses, may need expensive electric service upgrades. I live in an older house. I had a very old panel. When I installed my electric car charger, I needed to go from 100 amp service to 200 amp service. It cost me several $1,000s. Shouldn't the utilities, rather than the homeowners and building owners, invest, pay for these upgrades? Or how else do we pay for these upgrades? Because it's a big barrier, and for a lot of people, it's going to prevent them from moving in this direction. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So that is for sure the case. I'd say two things. One, wherever we can, I think we do want to make sure that we are maximizing energy efficiency. So I know there's some great building design engineers out there that are really testing ways that we can electrify as much of the home with while minimizing that need for panel upgrades. So in some instances that is possible. The other is, as part of our heat pump water heater program, we provide incentives for panel upgrades. And I think it helps to actually incentivize oftentimes. People might be interested. That's kind of a benefit you get. It makes future electrification more possible. We also are planning to provide actually incentives for pre-wiring, not just appliance upgrades. So if you want to pre-wire, we will provide incentives for that. So, and I believe the tech also has some panel upgrade incentives. And so at the very least, these things need to be included in the program design. I haven't heard that idea of should this come from utilities. It's an interesting idea I need to think about a little bit more.
Thank you for that, Zoe. And Laura, you actually specifically called out this barrier in your comments. What are your thoughts about how we're going to help homeowners and others pay for it, especially in low-income communities such as where you work?
Well, I think in low-income communities, wraparound services would be the best way to go, that a contractor just offers a whole electric homes upgrade and includes the panel upgrades. I think in incentives from the utilities it would be very crucial to allow this to happen. So I'm so glad to hear from Zoe that this is included in their incentives. So I think that would be a very crucial part to consider on the investment front.
Okay, thank you, Laura. And I'd like to address another question to you and then bring Zoe in because I want you both to give your perspectives on these various questions. So I kind of mashed two questions together. Is it recommended you should wait for your current gas appliances to break down or should you go out and replace them now? And if so, what to do with your old gas stove? Sell it to someone else? You're sort of just kicking the can down the road, so to speak. Send it to a landfill that has its climate cost, or can the stove or other appliances be recycled? So Laura, what are your thoughts? Switch now and what to do with the old appliances?
Well, I think I have to think of what Zoe said. You know, we have to reinvent things as we are going, right? We have to build the plane as we are going. When I got my induction stove, I just got rid of my old electric stove because I didn't want to go back into circulation. In low-income communities, they would certainly stay in circulation and would either be sold or given to somebody that is in need of a stove. So I think the ideal way would be to have a recycling program for old appliances that are still gas powered. Yeah, I think that would be the ideal way to have a collaboration with the recycling industry to make that possible.
Yes, actually sort of like a cash for clunkers program like we do with old polluting cars.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, interesting. Zoe, do you have any thoughts on that? What's Silicon Valley Clean Energy's position on switch now or wait for your stove to break down and what to do with the old appliances?
Great. Yeah. So the first question, I think it depends a bit about on your situation. So if you have the ability to switch before your appliances burn out, it's going to be easier for you, right? Because you have that time to make sure that your panel is at the right capacity. You can kind of optimize. It's not like you're desperate for hot water right away. You kind of want to turn it over in 3 days. You can talk to different contractors, make sure you've got one who's really good at what they do, have experience, that kind of thing. Maybe can wait a little bit. So that's the ultimate situation if you find yourself in that position. Most people probably aren't, and I think as program designers and policy makers, we need to take that into consideration. I mean, I'm just speaking for myself. I really think that far ahead. We have an induction cooktop because we did it when we were remodeling our kitchen, and it brings us a great benefit. We love to cook. It's fabulous. I haven't replaced my gas water heater yet. I think about it, but I think it's probably one of those things that, you know, where most people are going to do it when it's necessary. And so I think we need to kind of plan our programs and investments in that way. We will get to a point to meet our goals where we will need early retirement. Like that, if we look at the math and the models done by the CEC to meet carbon goals, we're going to need to retire some appliances early just because of how they're going in and how long they last. But again, I think that to me is more of a programmatic policy solution. How do you then create incentives and programs that you're proactively electrifying buildings where there still are gas appliances rather than relying on individuals to make that decision? And then on a great question on recycling, I haven't thought about it. I think when we replaced some appliances recently, a recycling company came and picked up the appliance. Cash for clunkers is interesting. It's hard for me to say at this point in the market, is that really gonna induce demand to kind of take stoves off the market? I kind of don't think that that's the barrier to electrification, that you have like too many old stoves or other appliances that are out there. People probably aren't going to reuse old hot water heaters. It's probably mostly stoves. So I personally would work more on how do you find a solution for folks that would be purchasing a used appliance to more easily and affordably purchase an electric one.
Great, excellent. Thank you so much. I'd like to perhaps talk a little bit about financing. Again, this webinar is part of our Investing in Climate Action for Jobs, Health, and Equity. So let's talk about investments. There's a couple of questions. I'm going to pitch them to you, Zoe, and then Laura, perhaps your thoughts. On Bill Clean Energy financing, such a good solution, but there have been some issues that we've heard in the press, some issues about some of that PACE financing. We're big supporters of this policy tool. How do we avoid these problems and ensure that the programs are structured equitably and fairly? And would the existence of a public bank or another funding source in your area help? Let's talk about what do we need to do to ensure that the money is available for everybody who wants to make these changes?
Great question. So we are right now considering to piloting a tariff on bill finance program at SBCE as well. We're moving through the approval process. And I think it opens up a great opportunity because it's available. It doesn't put a lien on your house the way that PACE does, and it's attached to the meter. So the benefits can kind of go. It's good for rental units, right? Or places, whether that's apartment buildings or single family homes that are being rented. And because it's attached to the meter, it also means that you don't have to do the same kind of credit risk analysis for people. You can, because people tend to pay their utility bills, and you can do it that way instead of allows more people to participate, basically. But yeah, the flip side of any kind of financing, whether that's mortgages or what's happened, some of the instances of PACE and solar, there are risks. I think one thing that's different about tariffs on bill though is it's not so much of a opening up a private market, right? It's something that would be really publicly regulated. So it's and it's really not even about, there's no profit incentive there because it's it's really about cost recovery. So I think we also need to understand tariff on those a different type of solution than PACE or other financing. Green banks, I think, have a really interesting potential solution. I know the California Climate Catalyst is being built out of the iBanks. They're focusing first on agriculture, but could we think about a statewide or region green banks that you could tap into and probably could be backed by federal funds at the Loan Programs Office, for example, to provide wide scale, reliable financing for not just for building electrification, but also for transportation electrification, lower rates for electric vehicles. I think there's a lot of opportunities that are yet untapped on green banks.
Thank you, Zoe. That's great. Laura, do you have any thoughts on financing, green banks, on bill? What does your organization feel we need to do to maximize the transition, accelerate the transition?
We're not so involved in the financing aspect. From talking to speakers that came to our programs before, I've heard that PACE has not been very successful in our region, that people are just very skeptical of the on-bill financing and the lien on the house and all that comes with it. So I think providing opportunities to enable all banks that are interested or credit unions to help their existing customers to finance electrification efforts would probably be very helpful, as the trust is already established with those institutions, instead of having specialized institutions go out in the communities that still need to build up trust to make that happen. So I think really looking at the existing consumer relationships is crucial for that financing part.
Excellent. Thank you so much to both of you. And I see we're getting towards the end of our time, and I always promise all of our attendees that we do end right on time. So there's a lot of other questions. I encourage everyone to check out the chat and the Q&A. There's a lot of specific stuff people have talked about and regarding to how they got their electric heat pump water heaters or their induction cooktops. We hope to do a lot more webinars in the future. Maybe we'll have to do one specifically on electrifying your own home. Is a very interesting subject. But I'd like to turn now to the opportunity for you all to take action. We did hear from Senator Becker earlier, and there's one particular bill that we'd like to highlight. It's connected to our conversation today. And in order to talk about what it is, how it connects to Climate Safe California, and what you can do today to actually make a difference, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Nina Turner. Nina, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. First off, I want to thank you for participating in today's webinar. Showing up with us here today is one thing, but taking direct action is how we make real change. If you haven't already, please take our first action, which was endorsing the Climate Safe California platform. I'm dropping the link in the chat again. Very simple task to do. Just fill out the form, click submit, and you have endorsed. Our second action today will be for you to urge your representative to support clean energy appliances through Senate Bill 1112 from Senator Josh Becker, which enables on-bill financing to remove the financial barrier for millions of Californians who want climate-friendly homes. With on-bill financing, customers can pay for climate-friendly appliances such as heat pump water heaters, as we've been talking about in the chat, or electric cooktops over time on their utility bills. So today I'm going to drop another link in the chat, very similar to our Climate Safe California process. Just a quick form. When you click on that link, it'll take you to our website. That action page just asks for some very basic information. And once you enter that, it'll show you who your local representative is. Click submit, and then you have taken action with us today. So while you do that, it should only take you a few minutes, if less. I'm going to turn it back to Duran, who will close us out for this webinar.
Thank you, Nina, and thank you all of you who joined us here today for taking action. I see a number of you have endorsed Climate Safe California. We really appreciate that. We also very much appreciate Laura Gromis from the U.S. Green Building Council, Zoe Elizabeth from Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and both your organizations for your ongoing partnership with the Climate Center. Thanks to Senator Becker and his whole team for being here today. And I noticed he was continuing to listen in through much of our conversation. So I'm very happy that we can move policy forward. That is the goal of Climate Safe California, to drive policy forward to unlock the potential for the clean energy future that we all know is not only necessary, but possible, and could be more prosperous and cleaner, more equitable, more safe. All of these things are values that we share. And by following the science and working together, we know that we can achieve great things. So I want to thank all of you who joined us here for our webinar today. I want to let you all know that we will be sending a follow-up email to you all that will include a recording of this webinar. Please share it widely with your colleagues and friends. Important information we want everyone to learn more about. And we hope you will sign up for our future webinars, including investing in farmers who sequester carbon, which is a topic we're particularly excited about. Let's lock that carbon in the soil. So on that note, we've got 1 or 2 minutes remaining, but I want to just take a moment to thank everybody one more time, all of you who joined us here today. Thank you for all your great questions. Thank you to our speakers, and thank you to our attendees, and thank you, Senator Becker. Thank you, Woody Hastings and Nina Turner, my colleagues who made presentations here today. Thank you for all the team working in the background and who helped make this webinar possible. Geraldine and Mark and the rest of you all know who you are. So on that note, I want to thank you all for joining us. Hope to see you at our next webinar, and we hope you have a great and climate safe day. Take care. Thank you.